Masculinity is in the spotlight, from men's mental health to shifting gender roles to the influence of the online world.
We need more men being in control and being meek. And meek meaning sheathing your sword, being in control of your emotions. You need strong masculine figures.
I didn't take it as Joel's giving up, he's given up on Australia. I took it as like Joel's just being very father figure in this moment, telling you that there could be a serious issue here.
We need to pull back a little bit on this over-feminization of the world, over-feminization of the men, this massive idea that all men just need therapy and all the world's gone, no.
Thank you for not selling me hopium about where things are going. Things are getting bad. But I appreciate you giving me information that I can base my mortgage decisions on, my family decisions on, my business decisions on. I really value that because you value me and my time, Joel.
It's happening in the UK.
100%.
You see with Tommy Robinson, all these other figures, they're going to jail for speaking up.
If your kid is struggling with being gay in Victoria and you want to help them work through that, and maybe they're talking to a priest about it because they're Christian, you can't do that in Victoria. You're not allowed to do that. The state can take your child off you. We need more of that, not we've got to demonize masculinity, because I feel like that's where this conversation's going as a solution.
Men are wired to be more aggressive.
It is factually inaccurate. Biology is not a predeterminant in humans of aggressive behaviour. Social conditioning and learned behaviours, or a feeling of a lack of power, result in men taking aggressive actions.
Some of the most terrible things that's happened in human history have come through women aggression, through manipulation, emotional damage, like Helen of Troy. That whole war was caused because a woman decided she's going to leave her Spartan husband and go be with Paris of Troy, and that caused a 10-year war, which ended up with tens of thousands of deaths. I mean, to me, that's a very aggressive act.
The Christian, I believe that we all have unique DNA because we have something special to offer this world. And when you take your life, you are robbing the world of the light and the full potential that you have.
I'm telling you, the next biggest industry will be AI relationships.
The whole pornography industry, AI industry, and how technology is accelerating that. Mate, this is like bringing alcohol to Aboriginals. I mean, they're just not used to it. It is like a crazy level of technology. This is a foreign ecstasy. If your sister has a boy, you know he needs a masculine person in his life. You're his uncle. Spend more time with the kid. Take some responsibility and actually help your sister raise that kid so that he doesn't have a higher chance of actually becoming a domestic violence abuser. I have another SBS debate for you guys. You might remember I engaged with Abby Chatfield and I kept my cool, and we had a bunch of other podcasters online that are popular in Canberra, and we debated the issues, and SBS did a little bit of a butcher's job. They did kind of cut a whole hour out of the show, but for you today, I'm pleased to say we've got another SBS debate. It is specifically about men's debate on masculinity. They've got a bunch of friends of the show that are actually in the panel, so I'm looking forward to not only watching this and reacting to this, but today I also have the great pleasure of having George from the Adelaide set, who's going to be here reacting with me. George, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Joel. Looking forward to this.
It's going to be a real cracker. And again, we might chat a bit at the end of the podcast about our last conversation, which caused a bit of a stir, but I think it'll be fun. But without further ado, guys, we're going to keep our mouth shut while we watch a bit of this. We're going to pause it as we go. We're going to see exactly what these guys have to say. And again, kudos to SBS The Feed. I love seeing debates like this. We need more of this in our democracy, especially seeing that I do believe Q&A was phased out, George. They're cutting it.
Yep.
Q&A, the ABC, it's gone. And this is the thing, you know, if you have a poor public debate, you can't actually craft policy in a way that is going to help the nation. George, did you have any thoughts about this? Any expectations going into this?
To be honest, I have no idea what we're about to walk into. I'm slightly scared because the first thing I see a guy in a pink jumper, and that's immediately a red flag for me.
You like Dean. I think you like Dean. He's a good guy. He's a good guy.
Okay,
all right.
Good.
Well, let's get into it, mate, without further ado.
Wonderful.
we need to pull back a little bit on this over-feminization of the world, over-feminization of the men, this massive idea that all men just need therapy and all the world's problems. No.
Masculinity is in the spotlight, from men's mental health to shifting gender roles to the influence of the online world. We've brought together some of the prominent voices online to get into the conversation. And just a reminder, the views shared here aren't those of SBS, but they are claims and opinions that are being debated online. Having lots of sexual partners is tied to your status as a man. Clayton, you're laughing, you're starting this one.
If I had to give one simple answer, no. I think if you're a man and you have what I class as like inherently manly traits, so like you're a man of pursuit, if you're a person of morals and principles, if you're doing it with the right intention, with being honest up front, is it needed to be a man? No. Can it make you better as a man? I think yes. I think there's merit to it. But I don't like the idea of a super high body count in women, if I'm completely honest. And I think it's probably hypocritical of me to say go sleep with heaps of women, because I also think I believe in purity and preservation. So
100%, yeah.
What do you mean?
With purity and preservation. I personally believe and have the belief that the lower a woman's body count, the better for her and for her future partner. Like I've slept with my share of women, right? And had a great connection with them, and I don't look at a woman any less because of it. However, if it's going to be the mother of my children and she's going to be a representation of me, I don't want 20 other men able to say, yeah, I've been with her, bro. And if she is a chink in the armor, that directly affects every other area of our life, whether we like it or not.
There can be dickheads out there that have had sex with lots of women. I know plenty of those guys. Then there's also just humble guys who are just good-looking dudes that just got heaps of pussy, and they're legends as well. And then there's guys that haven't really had much sex, and they can be nice guys as well. I don't really think it's specifically linked to whether you're a strong, cool, masculine man at all.
The hypocrisy is something that really does baffle me. Like, why is it such an issue to some men that some women do want to sleep around, but then like one of their mates are sleeping around heaps? And they're like, oh, good job, man. But then to the girl, it's like, no, that's not on. And that's interesting. Like, I respect 100% what you're saying. You wouldn't want to be with an individual that has slept around, and I'm the same. But when it's within a friendship circle and a girl's getting bagged out for it, man, I don't care what you're doing. You do you.
Exactly.
Leave them alone. Like, it's a personal preference.
Doesn't bother me.
Yeah, that's fair for me.
I'm not going to try and break it down on an intellectual level. I just find a chick that's been with way too many guys, I find that unattractive.
She knows what she's doing.
Stats are anything.
But that's great. She knows what she's doing. She's like experienced.
I don't want that.
Fantastic.
I want to be her first.
Who gives a shit?
If God willing said design your perfect woman and said put a body count on the chart of what she's.
I think God's busy, man. I think God's got bigger.
So Tarang, you said you don't care, but you said it doesn't matter to you. So let's say you had a magic button. Say they're identical twins and you get to choose this one or that one, and one of them's had, say, 100 partners and one of them's had 10. Is that going to affect your decision or not at all?
So I thought earlier that the chink in your armor analogy was a little bit medieval.
I thought that was weird too. I didn't know what that was.
But then you came out with this. Look, I don't know. Like, it could be he, it could be she, it could be they. Like, I don't, but
I've looked up with dudes.
The person.
You're not the only bi people here.
Yeah, I can't say I've ever thought about it in that way before. That the perfect person, because the perfect person does not exist, right?
Yeah.
I just think that something you said, Chris, I found really profound, which is that the way women will be judged, right, for being promiscuous in a way that men rarely, if ever, are, right? That kind of social conditioning and the acceptability of that is something that I have a problem with. Because to me, it's like we either judge everyone here or we judge no one. And I think
I agree.
When it comes to this, as long as people are safe and consensual, we shouldn't be judging anyone.
I agree with that.
Right?
It is double standards and it is misogyny. It's internalized misogyny. It's something that you're saying for you to date them, you need to have a requirement that you need to have a number next to you. And if you don't have that number count, I'm not going to date you.
Do you think he's a misogynist?
Hang on. No. Can I come back and do a question? What about the women that expect 6-foot men, over $200,000 salaries? They want muscles. They want this and that.
You're ticking all these boxes, man.
I'm under 6 foot. I'm going to clear that up. But let's be serious here. Like, it's not fair in this day and age that women expect X, Y, Z out of men a lot of the time, and that is factual. And they're considered empowered women for wanting that. But then if a bloke says, "Oh, sorry, you've slept with too many men," we're the dickhead. No, hang on a second. Like it's
as a bi man though, would you choose that if you're looking for a male partner and your male partner's had hundreds of sexual partners versus someone who's only had 10? Does it make a difference for you?
I would not care as long I would be dating this person, because I would actually, if they disclose that with me, that is fine. If they don't, I would not care, because I would not base my relationship with that person based on how many people they've slept with, because I do think that aspect is very odd and it stems from control and power. Because it has,
it's like if it's 5, 10, just to put it out there, I'm like, I can deal with that, I think. That's better. And again, I acknowledge this is judgmental, but it's not the number so much as the values that have to go in place. Because if she's a beautiful woman, she can sleep with 1,000 men in the space of a month easily if she wants to. What I'm interested in is purity, devotion, love, femininity.
The thing I struggle with is the idea that it's like pure or self-preservation around women. To me, that at its core signals an imbalance of power, perhaps control, or something remotely related to.
It's the same as a car. Like, this is a crude example.
Women are not cars, bro.
No,
women are not cars.
Do you take care of your car? Like, do you really, when it's yours and yours alone? We take a lot of pride.
I don't want other people driving my car, put it that way.
Not to say that she's less because of it, but
can I throw
but it is inherently that.
Is it okay for you then to have a higher body count than a prospective female partner?
Ideally not, but the fact is, do I? And yes. So is it somewhat hypocritical for me to say it from a numbers standpoint only? Yeah, it is.
So you yourself over because you're too much before. Is that what you're saying? Like if you're trying to meet someone now and it's like 50, you're like, shit.
I think men are only, if men do it with intention, we're only better from having multiple sexual partners. There's no downside for a man doing it because you're better at sex.
Just jumping in, can we hear from Mitch? I haven't heard from you.
I really want to contribute to this one. It's kind of derailed a bit. I think we move on.
Can I say one thing, please,
Yes.
as like a wrap-up? What I find really interesting about this conversation is that the prompt was that the more sex a man has is an indicator of his status as a man, and we've wound up being a group of men who are discussing, with the exception of Mitch, who saw that it got derailed, talking about how much sex women are having as
the flip side to that is
I just think
almost every woman that I know in my circles does think a man that has had a lot of sexual partners is a higher value male.
Can we go back to Turong and finish this segment, please?
Sure. Oh, that was all I was saying. It was just that I think it's interesting that we've externalized and projected onto women rather than going.
That's because we're men, so we can talk about our experience.
Okay, mate. What was your reaction to that?
Honestly, it is slightly confusing because I'm kind of thrown off. Because first off, I want to ask you, if you were there, what would you say to this question? Because I want to get your perspective, and then I'll bring in my perspective.
Oh, look, it's pretty simple. I don't have the same opinion as I don't think I've heard anyone say this, and I definitely disagree with Clayton, who started it off saying, like, basically, I don't want a partner with a lot of sexual. I don't want to date a girl that has a lot of sexual partners. That's what he said. I agree with that. What I don't agree with was then he's just like, near the end of that, I think it's a good thing if men with intention get experience. I'm like, no, hang on a sec. I totally disagree with that. I'm a Christian. I don't think having a lot of sexual partners is a good thing. I don't think it's going to help you have a fruitful long-term relationship with a girl. I think that's a journey you should go on with the one together. That's what I believe. But mate, I've got to say off the start, like there was a lot of editing in that. Not enough was said from what I could hear, to the point that the guy in the middle that said literally nothing except that he doesn't want to go into the convo, Mitch, who's a mental health speaker, I've got their names up. Mitch is like, it's like, why are you here, bro? Like, comment on the issues in front, or why you don't accept the invite? Like, you're a mental health speaker. You can, I'm sure you can say something on this topic that, you know, informs the audience as to where you stand on this, even if you disagree with all 5 speakers.
But do you know why he's not going to speak up and say anything? It's because all the data, all the statistics back up that men and women, both who have higher body counts, always end up in worse situations in terms of depression, trust issues, loyalty issues, and the data supports it. So that's probably why he knows deep down that this is a losing battle for him to even say anything. Because I'm the same position. I think both men and women ideally should have a low body count. If not, like, just have 1 or 2. Honestly, that's how.
Yeah, I totally agree. And again, look, I am no saint, guys. I am no saint at all. But I'm 28 years old. I've seen some stuff. I've met a lot of people, and a lot of people that have given me lessons about life and the tough experiences they've gone through. And then we've got a whole cheat book called the Bible, which literally tells us you're going to experience this in your life. You are the same. You have the same biology as people back in biblical times. Nothing's changed. You're a machine that operates in this way, and if you do this, you're going to get that. And so, look, it's an interesting discussion. It's at this point in time. Again, this is probably the first of maybe 6 or 7 topics. Tarang and Jeff on the right of the panel are kind of a bit annoying, but I just like the idea that
they're a little bit smug, like that like he wouldn't care at all. I mean, how would you not care?
It's like and Dean tried to break it down with a very common sense question, saying, all right, if you had a bunch of twins, Tarang, and one had a high body count, one didn't, you mean to tell me it doesn't make a difference? And Tarang, rather than answering the damn question in the binary, he's like, oh, I thought the first chink in the armor was an archaic comment, but this really outdoes it. And he doesn't even answer the question. It's like, mate, are you here to have a discussion or are you here to take the piss? And so I don't know. Look, I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
I'm also I agree, and I also am feeling a little bit uncomfortable with the SBS presenter. I feel like she's being her energy is kind of pushing on too much pressure onto this panel here as well. Can you feel that? Like the way she interrupted the end there, I don't know. It's like she's offended. I feel like she's offended, even though like this is supposed to be like an objective panel debate, and she's sitting there on the sidelines acting all offended. It's like you decided to bring a bunch of men in here to talk about manly things. There's it's going to be an uncomfortable situation for you. So maybe you don't be offended and try and like carry yourself as a professional.
Let's keep going to the next part. Again, I've met this lady. She's perfectly lovely. We had a battle of eyebrows when we met about who was better. I'm not even joking about this. I think she's got a bit of a Lebanese background. But look, very eager to see where else this goes. But also, I can see that there's been a lot of editing already in this. But let's see how the rest of it goes.
Men are wired to be more aggressive. And Tarang, I'll get you to start this one.
It is factually inaccurate. Meta-analyses across the world, across cultures, ethnic cultures, have proven time and time again that biology is not a predeterminant in humans of aggressive behaviour. Social conditioning and learned behaviours, or a feeling of a lack of power, result in men taking aggressive actions. But the idea that men are predisposed to be more violent, or that men are inherently violent.
What study said that?
So a meta-analysis means meta as in large.
I'll chime into there 100%. I reckon you are bang on in terms of men tend to be more violent when they are running from traumas, pains, whatever it may be. But for me personally, if someone was to step in front of my family and produce a threat, I will be a very violent individual. 110%. And if a man is not, I do not consider him a man. If you are not a man if you do not protect your family. And I remember I nearly got T-boned when my eldest son was 2 years old and the car nearly hit his door. And before I even knew it, I was out and I was about to pull the guy out of the car, and there was no thought process to it. In my opinion, men have that. I think 98% would act. And if the 2% that didn't, I'd get their testosterone levels checked pretty quickly.
Exactly. Testosterone. Men are definitely wired to be more violent. It's just nature.
I wouldn't say violent, I'd say protective.
Look, there is a biological response to testosterone that I think is not up for debate. I think higher testosterone produces higher levels of charged energy, which with unresolved trauma and shame can result in violence. I think in the modern day, where there's far less moments where our life is at risk, we're not living in villages being invaded by swords and spears, that power is more readily channeled to building a career and other things that requires tenacity and perseverance, in which that genetic charge or predisposition for power comes as handy. But I don't believe that if we're kind of trying to draw the assumption of men are more violent, that's not true. I think certain types of men are violent depending on how they're raised.
I mean, look at every single sport: rugby league, AFL, rugby union, UFC. UFC is like one of the biggest sports in the world that's driven by men. It's very obvious that men are much more violent. I think that's just silly to even ask that question, to be honest.
Biology may nudge, but it does not determine, in the sense that a person's response, regardless of their gender identity, to an external stimulus will be the product of many factors beyond solely their biology, right?
I'm keen to hear your take, Tarang, on the idea of the protector.
Yeah, this idea of being a protector gets brought up a lot, and I find it really fascinating. I don't think the idea of being a protector in as a holistic thing is a bad thing, right? But what I find interesting is why it always comes down to protecting from physical violence in a world that is now safer than it's ever been. There's less violence than there has ever been in Australia. So the idea of protectionism being so linked to the idea of being a man is really, really tricky, and always comes down to me, like, protecting from whom? And it's almost always other men, and we'll say things like, oh, we know what other men are like, rather than going, you know, we're trying to protect women from other men who are violent. We're trying to do this. Really, like, focus inward on our own shit, right? As a collective, like, what's our own trauma? What are our own histories? What's the shit that we're dealing with? What's the stuff that we're too embarrassed to say because it'll make us look gay or weak or effeminate? The men that I consider the toughest and the grittiest and the most manly are the ones who aren't afraid of those difficult conversations. They aren't afraid to actually challenge that idea that men need to be protectors and look at men more as being like allies to the community, allies to their family, and like standing beside, like, so they're like, I stand beside, you know, my wife, my partner, my woman, right?
But
rather than going,
forward.
I stand above her or I stand as the head of the house, because that's not helpful.
So for me personally, I used to be a very violent teenager. I used to love a good brawl. I used to love hurting people. I used to love getting hurt because I was running from pain myself.
Wow.
Right? I'd numb my pain with alcohol, drugs, and fighting. And it was my go-to. And the only thing that sort of took me away from that was facing my own traumas, my own trials, my own tribulations, and sitting down and actually looking in a mirror and saying, hey, man, you've got problems. And for me, my turning point was I got arrested for affray, assault police, evade police. I beat all the charges. Wow. But irrespective of that, like, just knowing that there was a chance of potentially going to jail and not being there for my family was enough to sort of kick me in the ass and say, you've got to change the way you're living. Like, you're running from something constantly by blowing out and getting angry at others. It's about reflecting, not reacting.
Okay, this is a weird one because I kind of agree. I think men and women are just as aggressive as each other, but I think men have more competency in applying violence. So what I mean by that is, like, this is going to sound strange, but guys are just as aggressive in certain social situations. Women will literally bully a girl so badly till they suicide. They will undermine tactics, manipulation, emotional manipulation. I mean, to me, that's a form of aggression. I guess where they went more into is the physical violence aspect, where men have, because we have testosterone, we have almost like that primal instinct kicked into us to be more physically violent. Yes, I agree, men are more physically violent. But I kind of agree, yes, women and men are just as aggressive. It's just that women know they can't kind of portray their aggression through violence. They have to do it through other means. Because some of the most terrible things that's happened in human history have come through women aggression, through manipulation, emotional damage, I mean, there's famous stories about like Helen of Troy. Like, that whole war was caused because a woman decided she's going to leave her Spartan husband and go be with Paris of Troy, and that caused a 10-year war, which ended up in tens of thousands of deaths. I mean, to me, that's a very aggressive act by a woman through manipulation and selfishness to go do that. She didn't hurt anyone, she didn't punch anyone, but it resulted in tens of thousands of people dying. So that's how I've taken that perspective. But also, like, it's a very strange one because, you know, that guy, what's his name, Mitch, kind of chimes in. He said something unique with the testosterone levels. If your emotions aren't, you know, properly controlled, it will turn into violence. I kind of agree with him a little bit, but just the way he portrayed it kind of made me irk a little bit, because if you're a young man and you hear someone like Mitch say something like that, it doesn't inspire you, does it, as a young man? That makes you feel like, oh, this guy's a bit of a wuss. That's how I took it.
Any of my comments in this, I don't mean personally, but when I hear a guy like Mitch, who I think, with respect, the guy could go to the gym a little bit more, if what he said was said by the guy on the far left of the panel, Chocky, that's Chris Katalis, if he said that, I would understand that. And he did say that with his story. But when it's coming from the other guy, I didn't believe it so much. It's just like, why are you trying to manipulate me? That was, and I know it's really silly, it might be silly to people listening, but if a guy's telling you that, oh, no, men are just aggressive because they've got unhealed trauma, for me, I disregard that. Whereas when I hear the story from Chris saying, I had unhealed trauma, I addressed it, and I'm more in control as a man. I think what's really annoyed me about this particular segment is there's like an underlying, like they've set it up so that, you know, the question is, are men wired to be more aggressive? I think the answer is yes, but the answer doesn't therefore mean, the answer to that doesn't mean that we have to demonize masculinity. It's actually we need more masculinity. We need more men being in control and being meek. And meek meaning sheathing your sword, being in control of your emotions. You need strong masculine figures, exactly what like Chris has demonstrated on this panel. And full disclosure, Chris is a friend. Chris he's battled with it. He's sharing his experience, but the guy didn't have to blunt his blade. He is actually more in control of his very sharp blade with regards to how he holds himself. And I think we need more of that, not we've got to demonize masculinity, because I feel like that's where this conversation's going as a solution. What do you think about that?
I want to push back a little bit, because when you said I think men are more aggressive, I don't know if I actually essentially agree with that, to be honest. Like I'm still kind of held in that point where I don't think so, because, and this is going to sound a bit strange, but like if you like, okay, I mean, equality's brought many beautiful things, but it's also shown that when women are in positions of power, they will utilize it for aggressive manner, and not in a physical violence sense.
No, I agree with you going. I think where we're disagreeing is the definition of aggression.
Yes.
Yeah,
So what's your definition of aggression? Let's hear your. That's what do you mean by aggression? And I'll tell you what I mean by aggression.
I'm purely talking physical,
Okay.
Purely physical. And look, as a matter of fact, the amount of men that are in jail, the amount of men that are committing these violent crimes, I think that's due to the testosterone levels. I think that if they haven't properly gone through childhood with especially a father figure home in the house, 50% divorce rate. I don't think that helps. I don't think that helps set the standard of this is what masculinity is. It's yes, being aggressive, but in a controlled manner, in a very, that's the sort of thing you exercise in rugby. That's the sort of thing you exercise against other males that are being aggressive, breaking the law, that sort of thing, trying to hurt your family. And I think Chalky demonstrates that. But I agree, women at the same time, I mean, they are and this was coming from women. And statistics show that women do bully. They go after women in the workforce. If there's 40 people in the office working and 38 of them are men and there's 2 women, the women will go out of their way to bully each other. That's statistics. That's the fact. That's what happens. So if we want to define aggression as, manipulation and backstabbing and all that, mate, I totally agree.
Well, my definition of aggression is the willingness to compete. So, if, like, for example, a soccer tackle, if it's a 50-50 bowl, one person will show more aggression and might put that extra 3%. So they'll come to the tackle with 53% effort. That's a more aggressive tackle than the person who kind of, in that last moment, kind of wussies out and loses that 3% competitiveness, like the aggression. They will lose the tackle. So that's kind of what I mean. Like, so men generally are, I guess you could say men are generally more aggressive in that sense. But I wouldn't go, women are not aggressive at all. I would say it's like 55% men, 45% women in my definition of aggression. But in terms of physical violence, if I was going to ask this question, do you think men are more physically violent? Then yes, 100% men are of course more physically violent. That's 100%.
And I agree, George. And that's the problem. It's like, why are you writing the questions like this? Why aren't you defining the terms? I mean, it makes a huge difference. That one word, men are wired to be more aggressive. That word aggressive, it's like, what do you mean? Emotionally, you're talking about physically. They're very different answers, and the statistics bear out. Men are more physical, women are more socially manipulative. That's reality situation. But let's keep going, man.
Let's do it.
Violent about things that their mates, their friends, their brothers, or family members are doing, and they just don't want to get involved. Like, that makes me look at them a certain way.
They're weak men.
Yeah, because violence against women is not something that we should only be making it a woman's issue. It's a man's issue. It's always been a man's issue because the majority of perpetrators that makes up the amount of violence against women and children a man. And that is a statistic that we're never going to be able to change unless we actually look within and say, hey, we have a problem. And I do think it takes stepping out, within that comfort zone, of being judged, or you don't want to upset your mate. You don't want to make them feel uncomfortable.
Don't point at me. I'm on your side on this one, man. I cannot stand domestic violence. And if I ever experience it, I will call it out, and I would never be friends with any man who commits domestic violence.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we don't have to wait for your sister or mother or cousin or someone that you know to be a statistic of violence for you to then say, well, I now want to talk about it.
That's right. A lot of my friends, unfortunately, have been incarcerated. But even within the jail system, if you go in as a woman basher, you are almost as bad as a rapist and a pedophile. They are not hard. They are weak individuals. And if you see it, say something. Like, I think one of the problems why some people don't speak out is that I've personally seen arguments between couples in public settings, and obviously no one knows who they are, and a man will go and confront the other male who is being rude or obnoxious to the female, and the female will actually turn on the person that's coming to help her.
Look, I think that there's so many factors at play here. I came to be really involved in this particular area following the murder of my sister, Nikita, in 2015. She was 23 at the time. And I remember going to the coroner's court, seeing her on the table, having to identify her, and the doctor being like, she's not going to look how you remember because her face, she was stabbed, like the report said no fewer than 35 times with a meat cleaver. And I asked the doctor, I was like, what does that mean? And I almost had to fight him and be like, tell me straight what that means. And he actually leveled with me. He said, after 35, we can't tell what's a separate wound. Like that. So it's more than that. So it could be 60, it could be 100, but after that, we can't tell. And as I educated myself and as I learned more and have met with so many perpetrators, so many victim survivors, their families, we're losing the fight. We're going backwards. So 10 years ago, it was 1 in 4 men self-report using violence or abuse. Now it's 1 in 3, right? I'm thankful that more men are admitting to it, right? It is the number one law and order issue for, state and territory police officers. It is like overwhelmingly what they deal with on a day-to-day basis. And at the same time, the commissioners of police are saying it's underreported, right? Yeah. And so I think we're losing the battle because a lot of us, and I say us, like men, will think it's over there. We'll go, other men do it. We couldn't possibly do anything that condones it. Like you'll have a guy in a group chat who'll be consistently making off-color jokes about women, and we're like, oh, it's not a big deal. Or we're too afraid of being the kind of black sheep or speaking up. Yeah. And that's the tacit approval that these thugs need.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, they feed off. The fuel for them is the fact that they can get away with it. Because to them, it's about power and entitlement and control, right? And so my sister, like so many women, was killed in the context of separation. She tried to leave, right? And on average, it takes a woman 7 times to be able to leave. And we always ask, like, why didn't she leave earlier? Rather than going, what is it about this guy, right? That we all know, right? That we all see, that we kind of interact with in society. Someone might be a co-worker, heaven forbid it's a family member for any of us, but someone that we know enough that we're just like, yeah, there's something not quite right about him, but it's not our place to do anything. No one is intervening to go, hey, mate, go talk to someone about what's going on inside before you hurt yourself or hurt another person. There's a study that was done, and they found that one of the pressures that men in this age group that we're all in feel is that pressure to be dominant or strong, right? Even if we don't want to be, right? And it's these unrealistic expectations that we put on men that ultimately become their own undoing. It's about acknowledging that as men, we oftentimes are physically capable of causing more harm if we wanted to, and acknowledging that we have a responsibility, right? And if you consider yourself a protector, the worst thing you can do is be the kind of weak individual who projects rather than goes and gets help.
100%. I think that the thing I was going to say, right, first off, I want to say I'm really sorry for your loss, man. That is horrible. I wouldn't wish that upon anyone at all, and I hope that the perpetrator is spending the rest of his days inside jail. But the thing that I foresee being an issue, right, so a lot of men don't want to speak up because unfortunately there is a side of women that have been so heavily hurt that all men are now targets. You see a man comment within these groups, they are attacked. You don't belong here. You don't believe us. Like, we choose a bear over you. And in my opinion, that creates a massive, massive divide. Women that have been hurt need to understand that not all men are their perpetrators. And at the same time, men need to understand that we need to approach and be there for these women in another way. And it's like you said, people ask victims, why does it take them so long to leave? It's not about why didn't they leave, it's about how can we help them leave.
Men have the responsibility to not only prevent but stop perpetrating domestic violence. I think we need to understand that domestic violence, as you would know, is more of a conversation around control. That's why it's usually used as an instrument of coercive control. And so why do weak men feel the need to use unnecessary means to control their relationship? And I think there's also a conversation around DV that's not just physical violence, it's also sexual and emotional violence. I mean, I actually, before I touch a woman intimately, will ask her, hey, are you comfortable with me touching you there?
Seek consent.
Yeah, I mean, and usually the first time we sleep together, and after that, you know, I'm not robotically like, is this okay, is this okay, is this okay? But I do think that, you know, men equate flirting with sexual escalation. Women usually, flirting for them is playful personality interaction and connection. And so often we can make women feel uncomfortable without knowing it by doing things that we assume is okay and they aren't. So I think a little check-in goes a long way to build safety. And when it comes to emotional violence, that's a real thing as well. Like, so often men will put offhanded comments knowing it's going to sting. I mean, I'm not saying this is just men that do this, but when we use our words, those things can be highly traumatic. And I know that seems like a soft comment to say, but some of the worst things that's happened in my life hasn't been anyone necessarily touching me, but the way that they've treated me and made me feel less than or very, very unsafe within being who I am. So we need to broaden that conversation.
And to understand that over time, it's about diminishing that person's sense of self to the point where they become a shell of a person. Yeah. Because it's much easier to physically harm someone when you break them down psychologically over a period of time.
It's about finding the missing middle as opposed to pushing people to the fringes. And, you know, instead of feeling like you need to hit someone or feeling you need to like freeze them out, it's about being a man, aka doing the work and knowing how to set a boundary. That's a normal, healthy adult thing to do. It's minimum standard. To be able to, if someone's doing something that you don't like, remain in yourself and say no. Yeah. As opposed to you, or I'm now going to act like a child. No one should be able to evoke that out of you. No one, unless your child is about to get hit by a car, you should not leave the state of being in your
cool, calm, collected.
In your castle at your home.
Yeah.
All right, mate. What are your thoughts on that?
This is a very nuanced one. I'll just start with a statistic. So it's true that the most, I'm not sure if you know this, but the most dangerous man a woman will ever meet is her husband. That's a true fact. So yes, going to domestic violence, yes, of course. If your husband is going to be the most dangerous man you ever around, there is the most utmost importance that men at all times control their tendency towards physical violence. 100% agree on that. And there is a huge responsibility on men. With great responsibility comes great power, right? And it's like a Spider-Man quote. Men, we know we're more powerful. We know we're more physically powerful. That's what I'm trying to get at. So yes, we have to be able to tame that beast inside us. And deep down, we are a monster, but in the outside world, we are like a soft hero. That's the best way about it, I believe. What they're saying, to be honest though, like this conversation felt a little bit like, I'm going to say kiss ass, to be honest. Because it just felt like they were all just trying to show how good they were as people. They didn't really touch into any nuance of this. Like there's obviously the responsibility of men in terms of like their knowingness of strength and physical ability. Always, most like 999% of the time will always be over women. But there's also women also have a responsibility as well to understand how dangerous men can be. And there are some women out there, I'm not saying all women, it goes both ways. There is like let's say 1%, I'll just use a hypothetical, that know how to basically push the buttons of an unstable man and use that to their advantage to manipulate them and turn them into a monster as well. So there's also that nuance that gets missed, and they didn't bring that up at all. That happens all the time. There's a famous actually murder in Victoria where there's this woman, I forgot the case, we should get it up, but there's this woman who was manipulating her boyfriend and her husband at the time to basically kill each other. and she created all these like such scenarios where she managed to allow them to start murdering each other. And she did it more than, I think she did like 3 times with 3 different boyfriends, where she basically was like organizing them, using them, and emotionally manipulating them to actually violently hurt each other. So there's that, but that's obviously a lot rarer than men generally speaking, and men having that power and that physical presence. So
yeah, well, look,
what do you think?
Mate, they started off with this story from Terang, and it goes without saying for both of us, if I can be so bold, mate, no one's here is saying domestic violence is fine. It's disgusting, and I'd like to think that, especially, I mean, with my guy group of about 4 to 7 of us, if any of them did anything in front of us, you pull them up and you say, there's nothing you can say to me that justifies you laying a finger on your wife in that way.
Yeah.
There's nothing that you can say to me. And that's the thing. There's no place for it. Now, with that said, I don't like where this discussion's going, because I can just hear, and you guys might have missed it, because I appreciate that, one, they're jumping all over the place with the discussion because they're cutting a lot of stuff out. So you're not seeing the transition of a normal conversation like George and I would have, where there's 0 cuts.
Yeah.
And the other thing is you're missing some of these rapid fire fact checks and context checks. Now, one of the ones I want to point you to, I think this was the first one, if you can pull it up, George, that they brought up was they were saying that one of the problems in Australia is that sorry, I'm just trying to pull it up.
You can send me the link on WhatsApp as well. That'd be great.
Sure, it's not a link. It's the one where he's talking about the actual. This is where Terang's talking. Here it is. So this is at about 17 minutes in. The 2024 Man Box study found that women who most strongly agreed. The 2024 Man Box study found that men who most strongly agreed with rigid ideas of masculinity were significantly more likely to have perpetrated intimate partner violence. That's from the Jesuit Social Services 2024 study. Now, anyone that reads that is going to be like, all right, context. One study, by the way, if a man is saying that if he has more rigid ideas about what masculinity is, he's more likely to commit acts of violence. I totally reject that. Totally reject that. When I think about my own father, when I think about the relationships that those men around me have, what I see and what a lot of studies show, I did a bit of a search before, is that often boys that don't have a man in their life, because again, it's a very complex issue. There's a lot more broken marriages that are skyrocketing right now. Men that are often raised by women households, single motherhood households, they do actually show higher rates of domestic violence. Now, look, that's not absolutely clear. It's going to be mixed. And at the same time, you've got to take things at a case-by-case basis. But to just demonize masculinity and say masculinity is the be-all, end-all, the reason why this is a problem, guys, there's a lot more to this problem than just one thing. There's a lot more to this problem. You've got women who are empowered today to choose the partner that they want. They have all the rights that a man has, and they have all the rights to pick the partner that they want. They need more discernment. 2, men, absolutely. Men are not what they used to be. They are just not. When I think about my father not once laid a hand on my mother. He taught me what true masculinity is. And, even the movies that you watch, you see this healthy... the men that I most looked up to in movies are men that are strong, they stand up for the weak, they are men that actually are in tune with, yes, their emotions, but that doesn't mean they cry all the time publicly. And they actually exude a confidence about them that doesn't require them to show that aggressively. And I think that's what Chocky over there really demonstrated early on in the discussion. In fact, I just wanted to point this out from my search, that there have been studies in the 90s, in the 2000s, and even a meta-analysis from 2018 from the Journal of Family Psychology. They do show that, look, there is often aggression that we see from young men where they're not disciplined.
Yeah.
Now, the problem Now, if you don't have a father in the household, and if the father often is the one that does the disciplining, sometimes the women do too, of course, maybe even more so, but having that father figure there, I've seen so many videos of this, I've seen so many stories of this in my own life, where the dad walks in the house after the boy's been mucking around, and he cuts it out. He's been mucking around with mum all day, and then the boy sees the dad walk in, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And the kid's just like, there's just something about having both parents, that good cop, bad cop, often, it really helps. And I don't like where this discussion's going, where it's like, nope, no. it's all at the feet of the masculinity problem, it's all men's fault. In an Australia where women are so empowered to pick who they want to date, it's 100% men's fault. I'm sorry, I totally reject that. Totally reject that. It's very complex.
I want to support your statement, and this is a bit more nuanced. So I'll say it again. I completely agree. Men have the most important, responsibility in domestic violence because we are more powerful physically. And also, a man, for example, this is not talked about a lot, but I know people in my own life that have had women domestically, violence towards the men. And where it goes wrong is the man doesn't have the confidence to either walk away from her and find someone else, or doesn't have the self-control because maybe he lacked a father figure who could teach him the discipline. Maybe he didn't do sports, or maybe he didn't, do things that allowed him to have that self-control, and then would strike her back, and then bang, you become the man, automatically becomes the evil man. And that happens a lot as well, which needs to be talked about, because I feel like this whole chat so far has been everything that's bad in this world is men's fault. There's no balance, there's no equilibrium here. It's all just men's fault. That's what I'm getting. And I'll read this. This is an interesting study. I'm not trying to be an arsehole here, but this is some research from the CDC, academic research, that indicates that lesbian women experience higher lifetime rates of intimate partner violence than heterosexual women or gay men. For example, the US CDC's National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey in 2010 found that 44% of lesbian women reported experiencing physical violence, stalking, or rape by intimate partner in their lifetime, compared to 35% of heterosexual women and 26% of gay men. So why am I bringing this up? All I'm trying to say is, yes, men have the ultimate power. Men have the ultimate discipline. They need to be the ones that are the forefront, the spear in this conversation to stop physical violence. But it's not just a man problem. It is both genders. It takes two to tango. It's not just men. And of course, there are some evil men out there who will cleave like this poor woman's face 36 times. I mean, that's twisted. That's evil. That's a whole other conversation. But this is about me and you, I think, are realizing that this SBS kind of debate is really leaning towards that everything that is a problem is always men's fault. And I really despise that, because what it showcases is that now it actually harms women more, because now you're telling women that women have no responsibility, women have no power in their own lives. It's always men's fault. They are always the victim to men. And that will teach women in some weird way that they should never take responsibility of their own actions, their own emotional manipulation, or own physical violence. That it's always the man's fault. So you know what? Do whatever you want. It's fine. Which ultimately hurts women more than it hurts the men, and also hurts the men. Yeah. Does that make sense?
No. It makes perfect sense, and this is the thing. Like, I know it changes the discussion when you throw one woman on the panel. Obviously, I would like to see women's opinion on this. It helps having an all-men panel. It's just a different dynamic. It would be good to see another woman panel and see some, diverse range of views from women, because we're not also, like, sometimes some of these guys on this panel, if you throw a woman on the panel that actually agrees with the guy's saying, they're more emboldened to say what they're saying. And I feel more confident talking about men. I don't like talking about women so much because I'm a dude. I went to an all-guy school. I see the failures of parenting, especially with fathers. Guys, like, the number one thing I think that could really lower domestic violence from the guy's perspective is don't sleep around. The girl that you sleep with, make sure she's the one. If you're not sure yet, don't do it yet. Wait. Date for another few months. Date for another few years. Get married. Put a ring on that finger first. Before you start having kids, bringing them into this world, into a broken relationship that isn't solid and isn't long-lasting. I think if you did that and you were present for your kids and your wife, forget about what the girls can do. They can do plenty of things too. But if guys did that, that's us taking responsibility for what we need to do. And I think that you got to stop these problems before they're at level 10, like cancer. We don't want to be dealing with cancer when it's terminal. We want to be dealing with it when it's a little seedling, when it's really early on, when it's a kid that doesn't have a parent around. If like for example, if your sister, unfortunately she got into a relationship with a guy and he's just, screwed nut and bolt, he's left. If your sister has a boy and he needs a masculine person in his life, you're his uncle. Spend more time with the kid. Take some responsibility and actually help your sister raise that kid so that he doesn't have a higher chance of actually becoming a domestic violence abuser. And so I think that as guys we can take responsibility for. I'll leave it to the ladies out there ladies out there, I'm sure there's plenty of them and I meet them all the time, that'll lambast women and said, why did you spread your legs for this guy? Why didn't you date him a little bit longer? It takes two to tango. I think the girls are in a better position to make those points, but dudes, we got to get our shit together.
Yeah, and I'll even bring a celebrity example, like Chris Brown, Rihanna, very famous case where Chris Brown basically in the peak of his career bashed Rihanna and kind of derailed his entire career. And this is a classic example where Chris Brown and his ego, because there were reports where Rihanna was slapping him, she would take his Ferrari car keys, flush them down the toilet, like she was being very abusive towards him. And instead of Chris Brown in that moment being a true man and stepping away from her, instead he let his ego take over. Oh no, she's Rihanna. I got to stay with this and put up with this bullshit because I'm a celebrity and I need to be with the queen, the Illuminati queen, Rihanna. That was kind of like what was happening behind the scenes. And what happened one day? He snaps, does something stupid, hurts her, destroys his entire career, hurts a woman. He's obviously much more powerful than her, much more physical, like could really hurt her. And now he wasted 10 years of his career for one moment. Instead of having the confidence to not go, no, Rihanna, enough's enough. I'm going to step away. I'm Chris Brown. I can find a new woman. Nope, he didn't do that. And this happens to a lot of men. They stay in and women. They stay in a toxic relationship. It's a bit harder for the women because they have to deal with the physical presence, like what happened to this guy's sister. But for men, I think it comes to responsibility. Men need to know when they need to walk away from a woman who is starting to do things like that are indications that it will start to escalate into potential physical violence. You need to know when to step away from a toxic relationship and not stay with someone just because it's Rihanna or just because it's like a hot girl or whatever you're dealing with. You need to know when to step away, and that does come from a lack of discipline, I think, from a father figure from above to let the boy know that you, as a man, have the ability to always, if you have to evacuate, you can. You're a survivor at the end of the day. So it's a really tough one. But yeah, I'm still not happy with the way SBS is kind of portraying this as it's like, right now, it's like 95% of the world's problems is because of men. That's how I'm taking this.
Yeah,
so far.
and you know what's crazy, mate? You've got all the perspectives of these six guys, none of them saying it's fine. No. You will not find the guy that will publicly say domestic violence is fine. He doesn't exist. It's not a thing. And that's what's annoying about this. It's like we're on the same page, but our solutions are different. The reason I'm a conservative is because I think that when you set up a family in the right way, these things have a much, much smaller chance of these things happening. But the lefties, they're just like, oh, why is domestic violence going up? Why is all these things at a record high? They love inflating these statistics and saying, 1 in 4 women have been raped. And it's like, okay, do you think maybe that has something to do with what's happened to marriage, the destruction of the churches, where we get our morality from, the idea that we are under God, the creator, and that he gave us a cheat book called the Bible, which is like a hack as to how our biological code works, and some, 12 rules for life by God? Maybe that's what's happened, but there's no consideration of that. And all the guys here, obviously they're saying what they're going to say because they're decent Aussies. They're just decent blokes.
I do smell a bit of fear on these guys. I do feel like they're just... Yeah. There's too much agreement for me in this debate. Yeah. And like, for example, like I'm trying to bring some nuance to this debate right now by adding like some nuance and and some examples and bringing up some statistics, because I feel like it's important for the broader audience out there to understand that this is a lot more complicated than just, yep, everything is bad, man bad, that's it. Like it just, okay, cool. What kind of conversation is this then?
Yeah. Also,
are we evil?
And also, mate, in a country where 35% of Australia is foreign born, and people are getting in relationships with guys that aren't Aussies. They didn't go to Aussie schools. They are, they don't have our values. Even the kids that were born here go and stab my bishop in the eye. Like there's no even mention of what immigration is actually doing to this country. Record levels of domestic violence. There was a study about university students getting sexually harassed and even raped on the way to university in Australia. This is what they said. They inflated the word rape and what it meant. On the train and whatever. Mate, when I go on the train, it's like spot the white guy. I don't see a lot of Aussies there. I see a lot of people from internationally, many of which aren't born here, and you expect them to have. And this was my gripe with Abby Chatfield. She's like, "How does this affect your life? Mass immigration?" I'm like, I don't know. Women getting assaulted. I don't want my sisters or my niece to be assaulted on the way to uni, like many girls are saying. And it's like there's no accountability for the things that are actually happening. They just want to go for the men that were born here. They want to have more power over them from whatever means, and they just want to guilt them into getting what they want. I'm sorry, I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy. I will call that out. But anyway, look, we're halfway through this thing. Let's see.
Let me just add one more thing. I want to go into the immigration because there's also the theological argument. There are some, like, if you're going to immigrate, all these people have different theological beliefs. Like, for example, Islam is a great example. There are parts of the Quran, like I'll quote here, 4.34, Surah An-Nisa, men are the protectors and maintainers of women, because Allah has given one more strength than the other, and because they support them from their means. As for women, from whom you fear arrogance, advise them, then forsake them in bed, and then strike them. But if they obey you, seek no means against them. So there are some theological conversations that need to happen as well. There are some religions that will say, yes, you need to strike your woman if she needs it. Basically, that's what. When you read that quote from the Quran, did you hear that? What did you hear?
Mate, I being familiar with many parts of the Quran, I just don't see it as a book that I should be taking tips on women on. Just don't.
Yeah. So, anyways,
yeah,
something
I totally
to think about.
agree.
Roles are the backbone of a healthy society.
I think it is a big claim to say that traditional gender roles is something that is a reflection of the current society. When we look at modern day, I don't think that structure exists because obviously there's so many things that encapsulate what we see a man is in this modern day. I do think, this idea of having a structure did regress women and it did regress queer men and marginalized communities.
What others think? Like,
I think it's.
I'm looking at you, Chris. I don't mean to ask you that.
Everyone's different. Like, I think you can't make a blanket statement like that. I was in construction for 10 years, and for me, my role as the father and partner to my fiance, right, was to provide and protect. So she could stay home with our children, she could take them to school, she could be there for them at home, and someone else wasn't raising my kids. Now, does that mean that everyone needs to do that? No way. But then you've got to think at the same point that so many people are now labeling masculinity as negatives. And that's another part that you've got to look at. Like, men are scared to be men because they're scared of being labelled by the greater population in some aspects.
Our society is better now than it was 100 years ago. That was built from traditional gender roles. I mean, the basis of literally any society is a man and a woman coming together, having sex and having kids.
I wouldn't blanket say society's better.
I suppose there was perhaps like a correlation there, but one didn't cause the other.
It's got us to where we are today, to be able to have these more flexible arrangements. That's what makes society better. Men working harder to protect and provide for their family, their kids, and their partner. And I know some people are just born in a way where they're not into the male and female traditional gender role. That's fine. But I think the foundation of a successful society is men and women coming together.
That's especially like heteronormative, right?
Yeah,
when you think about it like
that's
that.
Right. Heterosexuality is normal. That's the word heteronormative just is a buzzword when we all know that heterosexual relationships are by far the most common relationship in the world.
Can we hear from Tarang, please?
I think that some people may follow traditional gender roles, right? And that works for them. I also think that traditional gender roles historically haven't given men a lot of freedom to be things other than stoic and determined and strong and outwardly resilient. Real men cry sometimes. They feel shame, they feel guilt, they feel fear, they feel terrified.
But it's being able to express that makes you a man, in my opinion.
I think so. I think that we need that flexibility, not for women so much as for men, to be able to feel that they can express themselves, that they can be who they are in a way that doesn't hurt other people and helps them live and realize their full potential as human beings.
I think traditional gender roles are important because if you look at nature, I think we could all agree that masculinity is inherently associated with like pursuits, doing more, protecting, providing. No, it's not to say that women can't be, protectors and providers, but there's no man here that you put a kid in front of us and in a dangerous situation where that inner instinct in us doesn't want to come out and protect. That's inherently masculine. Women, on the other hand, it's nothing wrong. It's just not their strength or they're in their nature to do that. Look at what's inherently true, like whether we like it or not. Men are stronger, they're better providers. We are okay working longer hours.
It's very centered or like a lot to do with social conditioning, a social construct. We pretend like it works equally for everyone, but it's not. I do think, the structure itself tells men to perform, Men spend a lot of time performing.
But that's your perception. Other people have a different perception.
True, yes.
Most men I know would say, I'm not influenced by these societal norms or social constructs. That's just who I am naturally. I just want to be strong, simple, work hard, do normal things. That's just who I am.
Can I intervene here? I think it's very interesting what you just said. In terms of all your friends, they work hard, they do X, Y, Z, so you said, right? In terms of men's mental health being absolutely astronomical, so your friends, the ones that are happy to live in this day and age and be quiet and work hard for their families, they're the ones that are actually taking their own lives because they're not feeling comfortable enough to open up.
Mitch?
Yeah, I think coming back to the question and looking at data is probably a good place to anchor in. So do men have better lives? Unequivocally, yes, in almost every metric, access to healthcare, etc. Has the role of men improved? No, it's gone backwards. We know that because there's more ambiguity. Suicide is at 75% of men to women. It's the leading cause of death between 19 to 55. 12 times more men are incarcerated than women. Men are twice as likely to engage in high-risk addiction behaviors. Men still don't have the capabilities to seek help and reach out and find the connection they need in order to better their lives. Women have done an amazing job at rewriting their playbook and their blueprint. And I think that was a great movement, which has now been achieved. What's happened with men is we've ripped up the blueprint from provider protector and we haven't replaced it with something else. So we've created a generation of lost men, and there's nothing more dangerous to the world than lost men. The men are like, well, who the f*** am I then? Why isn't anyone telling me to find a healthy middle ground of what it means to be a protective, providing, responsive man in a modern context?
I know this divulges from the actual conversation.
Men have always been overrepresented in suicide, always have been. You brought up suicide between men from 19 to 55. Well, do you know why that is? It's because older men die of cancer. Young men die of suicide because they don't die of cancer and heart disease and things like that.
Actually, the men who take their own life most are between the ages of 45 to 60.
Yeah.
I think the real discussion is, and the important aspect is having a role. I think things go bad when you don't know your role. For example, if there's an Australian researcher that did a piece of work on what are the words men use to describe themselves before they take their own life. And the two main words that came up were worthless and useless. Yeah. Which essentially means that a man's greatest need instinctually is to have value to the world, is to have utility, which is different from a female who are often better at feeling innate utility and value just for being alive. I think the big thing we've lost with men is, am I needed? What am I needed for?
There's a lot of men who feel like they're fighting to find that need, but they're also being made wrong for wanting to have that need.
Exactly.
Like the moment a man gets in a relationship and says, I want to love you, I want to protect you, I want to provide for you, but he has a little standard, like, hey, I'm going to give you all this, I'll literally die for you, but please dress a bit more respectable.
I agree with a lot of what you said, Mitch. The one thing I suppose I differ on is that I don't look at it as being a case of women feeling innately more attuned to like the joy of living or having a sense of purpose just by being alive, right? And men need a sense of purpose to feel alive because of a masculine trait. I think we're socially conditioned into that from a very, very young age, into what the role of like a man is, right? But I do agree that they need some sense of purpose, because without it, you're just aimlessly going through life.
About that?
The male loneliness epidemic.
Radical thing here, and this might encompass a lot of the discussion there. Look, I think that when women entered the workforce, I think the people that benefited the most were the corporations and the government. Their tax base doubled, they get a lot more taxes, and as a result, the purchasing power of a couple has decreased. You know, back when my mum was a kid, she was one of 13 kids. There was basically, the ability to provide for those kids was a lot easier. And the same for my dad as a kid. He was one of 7. And once women have basically entered the workforce, the price of houses go up, the price of everything goes up. Don't get me wrong, there are other economic problems that this country's faced with mismanagement in Canberra, but this is what has happened to an extent. I'm not saying women shouldn't work. I think you should have the choice to work, but this is what's happened as a result.
About taxes as well.
Yeah, exactly. The government's benefited from, double the tax base.
Now double the population.
Yep, exactly. And this is the problem that I see with that. If the man's no longer the chief provider of the family, he's not being appreciated. Men will walk over broken glass for a purpose, for providing for their family. If they are literally like, nope, it's the buck stops with you, we're all relying on you, that's your job. Men will do that willingly. They will do that job where they're up at 3 a.m. to get to the construction site at 4 a.m. to do hard work with their hands, bricklaying, and then come home to, a home and a meal and a lovely wife and 4 kids. Like, men will do that. They are made to handle stress. Women, not so much. They do it, but they're very much not as happy. And we see that with married couples versus couples, that are single even. Women that are out there, slaving away to pay the rent to live in Bondi because they want to live in Bondi. But the reason I mentioned that is one of the fact checks it was a context check that they pulled up when these points were made, was that loneliness is more of a contributing factor to suicidal ideation and depression than socioeconomic disadvantage in men. Around 1/10 of men have made a suicide plan in their life. Yeah, okay, so they're saying socioeconomic is not as big a factor. It's loneliness. But loneliness is happening because men aren't getting into relationships earlier. We're pushing weddings back. We're pushing moving out with a girlfriend back. That's not happening so much. Versus you get married young in your early 20s, you're able to get into the property market, no one can afford a house, you're able to keep the bills at bay because your purchasing power is higher, inflation's not as high. How could it not be socioeconomic? How could it not be? And so I don't know, I'm looking at this and I'm like, I get it, you want to say, oh, it's men's loneliness, therefore we have to listen to them. No, men don't want to be listened to. They want a purpose. They want to find their place in society as clear as it was in the 1900s. That's what they want. That's what they need.
Also, people forget that it's only been around 60 years that men and women have been working together, essentially. So I'm not saying women shouldn't work, but the idea of men and women working together, the impacts in terms of, double the taxing, more time away from home, the invention of white goods like the washing machine stuff enabled women and the pill, which has now been shown. Research has shown the pill is just as dangerous as asbestos, as a carcinogenic. So, women are having to take these very dangerous medicines to have like a balanced, like a masculine lifestyle. They literally have to take a medicine which is poison, and also everyone still has to come home and fix the house up. Everyone still has to come home and do the dishes and do the washing machine. So it's not like nothing's changed. All that's happened is that now half the population has to work and has to be taxed. And also all the research, like I've got the research here. The research shows that women, on average, report valuing flexibility and work-life balance rather than and time for caregiving than men. So men will always choose income over flexibility and lifestyle. Men will just always go for the highest. So I'll give you like a nice example. If I could told a man and a woman, if you could make $1,000 an hour, how many hours would you work? Women will generally say, yeah, I'll work 3 to 4 hours a week. Men will be like, how many hours in the day? I'll work every single hour.
Exactly.
So that-
the Uber data shows this. Men work
Yeah.
more hours than women. Look, income's going to be there as a result. Jordan Peterson, if you work 14% more hours, you'll get 40% more pay over the course of your career. It's like, guys, this is how men are. They are providers.
OECD data, 2023, average weekly hours, men 41 hours versus women 37 hours. So, and in every data I've looked at, even from every university across the world, showcases that men prefer to work more hours and work for high income than women do. So it's also, so it just goes to show that traditional roles that we've been using for hundreds and hundreds of years obviously would allow for an acceleration of society to then go to the next level, what's truly capable for humanity. And now, over the last 60 years that's been removed, we're seeing consequences to all this. I think that a lot of the male suicidal rates, depression, even domestic violence, you could argue, has come through this experiment we've been doing for the last 60 years, which is starting to show cracks. And sooner or later, we're going to have to start going, hey, what's happening here? But I also do, somewhat agree with Mitch that at the end of the day, the most important thing is the role. So maybe a way to get around this in a more progressive sense is, as long as a man and woman or in the relationship has a role to serve in some sort of way, that's where the power is. So I think men who lack roles and women who lack roles will always inevitably find themselves in states where they're depressed and suicidal because their life is meaningless at that point. So a man needs to have meaning in life, and women, of course, want to have meaning, but they also want flexibility, lifestyle, and the ability to caregive. And it's quite clear. All the evidence supports this. It's not misogynistic to say this. This is just the way it is.
Let's keep moving because I think the next one's going to tie into it. It's the male loneliness epidemic isn't being taken seriously. Let's do it.
Isn't being taken seriously.
As a man, sometimes it feels self-indulgent to be able to have this kind of conversation. If I reflect on my dad, who got up every day and went to work, he didn't have a sick day. He didn't have the opportunity to do that because that was a privilege and a luxury that he could not afford because the lights wouldn't stay on or the mortgage or the rent wouldn't be paid, etc. And I think, as we're trying to figure out masculinity for those men who have the ability to do that, the privilege, then it's almost incumbent on us to have those conversations because loneliness happens, right? We've all felt it. And I want to get to the why and then the what to do about it. Okay, you feel lonely, so what? What's next? Because in that state of loneliness, you're either going to harm yourself or harm others. And neither option is preferred.
It's a vicious cycle.
I do think there is a big conversation around male loneliness epidemic, but I do think the conversation itself derails from the real issue because I don't think men are asking themselves, why are they lonely? People don't want to look with it and say, I want to do the work. Because I don't think men are out there willing and wanting to do the work. And I do think there is this expectation that we put on ourselves. It also does go into then some men projecting, blaming why they're lonely on other things, relationship, society, careers, rejection, and
Everything else
but themselves.
Big victim mentality.
Let's go back to the stats and facts like I've done a couple of times during this talk. So what is true? 43% of Australian men are lonely. That's a big chunk. If I was to ask you, would you get on a plane that has a 43% chance of crashing? You would say, no, that's a huge chance. Middle-aged men are 3 times more likely to feel lonely. And you are twice as likely to take your own life if you're very lonely. So the conversation for me is less about, are men lonely? Yes, a lot of them are. It's what is the cure to loneliness? And what we know is not the cure to loneliness is the quantity of connections you have in your life.
The quality.
The quality. It's 100% a quality-based discussion because you can have lots of people you talk to, but talking and connecting are completely different things. Connecting is I understand you. Talking is I exchange information with you. Not a lot of people, in fact, I would say if you have 3 or more people in your life who can say, I truly understand why you tick the way that you do. When men feel like they're not just going through the motions with someone and talking about the footy scores and the weather, but actually more values-orientated discussions, that's when they're like, I can't fucking live without this person. This is my go-to ride or die homie.
100%.
And as you know, if a man is that to you, you will do anything to protect it.
I've got men like that in my life and I love them so much. Because they are the ones that keep me grounded. They keep me sane.
They're the ones that'll pull you to check.
And they're the ones that are not afraid to tell me when I need to reflect on something as well, right?
Yeah, they'll call you out.
And I'm grateful because it's built up over time and trust. And like, I've survived a suicide attempt, and it's a pretty f***ed up place to be. But what you said around the idea of like quality of connections really resonated with me because, and I'm sorry for interrupting and finishing your sentence there, Mitch, because for me,
it's passion. I get it.
it was that I had the outside view was have lots of connections, have it all. The inside, the inner dialogue is worthlessness. It is isolation. It is loneliness. It was genuine, profound sense of like, I am worthless and have no friends.
The old school way of stand strong and deal with it yourself is so,
it's not helping men, and we see the consequences.
It doesn't work. Yeah,
at all.
Exactly right. It does not work.
I haven't heard from Dean in a while. One thing that we spoke about was therapy language and how it's infiltrated the mainstream, and you had some criticisms of it. I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
First of all, if someone's been through a serious trauma, therapy is probably a good thing, all right? I also believe that there's been this narrative in the last 5 to 10 years that all men need therapy and all the problems in the world could be solved if men just went to therapy. And I think there's been this over-reliance on this idea that men just need therapy. I've been through it myself and it achieved nothing. I went through almost 6 months of therapy with an ex-partner. We talked through all these issues and at the end of it was like, I'm still in the same place. I've still got the same problems. Life is hard. No matter who you are, life is very difficult. Sometimes you just got to step up and do the best you can and keep getting up off the ground and just keep going. I know we have some therapists here in this room. I'm not saying your, jobs aren't valid, but I think we need to pull back a little bit on this over-feminization of the world, over-feminization of the men, this massive idea that all men just need therapy and all the world's problems. No.
So the question I have for you, right? What do you define as therapy? Is it sitting down with a psych, or is it seeing a trauma coach? Is it in a men's group where you're outdoors and you're learning about the land that you're living on? Like, what do you consider
therapy? Is it art class? Like, that's something they do for therapy.
I'm talking about the traditional.
So you're talking, see a psych, a counsellor,
the psychologists who sit and they say, "Tell me how you feel," and you talk to them for an hour.
I agree, because that typically just gets you to understand how up your problem is, and it's like how to deal with the problem, not get rid of the problems. It's just getting really equipped to hold a ball of fire, and you need to just get less burnt because you know how to juggle it better. It has its place.
It has its place. Definitely has its place. I just think we need to be careful a little bit with it, and let's not take away men's strength. And we talk about taking away men's purpose. Yeah, sometimes they just got to be.
Therapy's meant to be different from women to men, right? Like we do therapy for men, like we do women. Men need a very different type of therapy.
I know for myself, right, as someone who goes to therapy, if I go see the psychiatrist or a psychologist or whatever, and I take medication, I'm very open about that, right? It's something that helps me. And if I'm taking that medication and then I'm eating junk food, I'm doing no physical activity, I am sleeping in, I'm doing none of the things, right? I'm not going outside and touching grass and then going, oh man, I wonder why this one pill is not helping me.
So there's no way I would be sitting here today on this panel if I didn't go to therapy. I would be dead.
Wow.
I got diagnosed with OCD when I was 7 because my mum saw me touching the dashboard of her car hundreds of times, blinking over and over, saying the word God out loud and repeat. And the doctor looked at me and said, this is one of the most severe cases of anxiety we've ever seen. And I went the next 20 years struggling with that, depersonalization disorder, which is where you feel like you're floating above your own body and you're about to have a panic attack pretty much all day, every day. It's a living purgatory hell.
Wow.
Depression, and a raft of other things, whilst pretending everything was fine, but on the inside wishing that something would take me out so that I didn't have to do it myself. People who go to therapy and don't have good experiences, it can happen. I mean, I've gone to therapy and left feeling worse, more invalidated, sicker. But I would say that the vast majority of the time, therapy is worth it. It's about finding A, the right therapist, and B, the right type of therapy. So I don't think I think the point you were trying, maybe, I don't want to speak on your behalf, you were trying to raise earlier, was that sometimes you can wallow around in your situation and become a victim as opposed to taking action. Is that true?
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much, yeah.
So I don't think that's healthy. But I do think that it is worth being patient and persevering to find a fit that professionally benefits you, because there is a vast majority of research would indicate that either way, a professional guiding you through a hard time is a good thing.
Chris, you had friends who had this mentality to tough it out.
Yeah, for sure. So the whole idea of toughing it out has seen probably 10 friends plus of mine take their own lives.
I'm so sorry.
Overdoses. There has been a few that are questionable whether it be taking their own life or not, and that's from the age of 18, and I'm only 29 now. So I believe that we do, as men and women, we need to find the right modality to help us heal, and friends do need to be there to help, and it's not weak to speak in any way, shape or form. But at the same time, it's about finding the right modality to heal. So I think being someone that has lived through a lot of loss, which sucks and it hurts every day, you do need to try and find what best works for you.
What are your thoughts on that?
The dating world holds...
Look, I at the end there, when Choco said about finding your own modality, I agree with that, but I do feel like this is deeper than just finding a modality. I think it's a lack of connection with God in a more secular society as it's grown and grown. I mean, there's correlation between Australia becoming more and more secular and depression rates increasing as it happens. I think when you have a connection with God, and it doesn't have to be a Christian God, but just anything in a spiritual sense, that will bring you a lot of power in overcoming certain aspects. I know you're a religious man. I was an atheist for 8 years, and for me, my modality was coming back to God in my own mystical way, not necessarily just straight to orthodoxy. And I think that is missing from the conversation always, because the suicide rates are 75%. It's not like it's huge. It's not like it's a little problem. It's actually it's a human disaster, if anything. And I think tiptoeing around saying, as long as you find your own modality. No, people are dying every single second, basically, from suicide. It's much bigger than that. And it is, I think, deeply with their disconnect with God or disconnect with their higher spiritual self. That is the biggest problem right now for human society. And the more and more disconnected we become from something higher than us, the more and more this suicidal and loneliness epidemic. The loneliness epidemic is correct. If men are going to grow up soft, not financially independent, not able to, and it's also got to the economy, if they're not able to produce a situation where they could have a family or a life, why would a woman want to be with that man if he can't even produce some sort of financial independence? Because women, what are they looking for? Security, stability. The ability to nurture, the ability to caregive, the ability to lean on someone sometimes. And if they're not feeling that, then of course the loneliness epidemic's going to go up and all these incels will arise. We're living in the generation of incels. And you know what's going to happen? This is the most disgusting thing about all this is AI is going to step in and fulfill that need. Men won't need women anymore and women won't need men, and they will just get an AI girlfriend or boyfriend. That's what's happening now. I'm telling you, the next biggest industry will be AI relationships. There are already people now who are falling in love with their ChatGPT and asking their ChatGPT to marry them.
Yeah,
it's happening right now.
I totally agree. Look, the whole pornography industry, AI industry, and how technology is accelerating that, mate. This is like bringing alcohol to Aboriginals. I mean, they're just not used to it. It is like a crazy level of technology, which is like, we're not used to this. This is a foreign ecstasy. And I think this is partly why the drug, the opium wars and all that with the Chinese and the US are such a sinister thing. And the UK. But no, look, going back to it, I had a little chuckle, and I think you did too, when Dean and the guy next to him, Mitch, made this point that, Dean was like, I did 6 months of therapy with a therapist, did nothing for me. Whereas Mitch is like, look, I've done it, and I wouldn't be here without it. And mate, you and I'm sure we both agree here. Both views are valid. There are some men that they benefit from having therapy like that, whereas there are other men where they have different forms of therapy. The number one thing, that's helped me personally is having a guys group, having guy time where we do guy things. Whether that's hanging out and having stupid arguments every week or couple of weeks. It's like going and doing things like fishing or whatever. Like that's therapy. Even gaming can be therapy to an extent if it's done in a controlled manner. But this, I think where Dean's coming from, if I can be so bold, is, there's been a push to feminize the approach that we need to help men with this over-therapization of them, where it's like, oh, men just need to be listened to more. That if they all had a therapist, they wouldn't go on these suicidal rampages. And it's like, no. That's a broad brush approach that might work with most women, but with a lot of guys, that's not going to work. They don't want to be heard. They want the heaviest burden you can give them. They want a dragon they can slay. They want a task to be, a mountain to be conquered.
Something higher than them.
They 100%. And so I look at these, I do look at some of these solutions, and often with the suicide epidemic with men, it's like they try to put a female in charge of the approach, not a dude, but two, they try to feminize the approach to solve it. Things that, with women, for example, one of the number one things where they initiate divorces is because they don't feel heard. They need to be therapized a bit more. They need to be heard by their partner. Whereas with dudes, we're just different. We're like, what is the root of the problem? What is going on in this argument between me and my wife? It's a very different situation. And so anyway, I'm happy to keep going, but yeah, I certainly felt that. I've been recommended, and again, when I left school, within the first 6 months, I had 3 mates that attempted suicide. One of them I successfully helped not to, and another, unfortunately, he did take his life. This is a real thing that's going on, and anyone that's out there that needs help, 100% should seek it. There are plenty of organizations out there. There are plenty of churches. There are plenty of people that are out there. As a Christian, I believe that we all have unique DNA because we have something special to offer this world. And when you take your life, you are robbing the world of the light and the full potential that you have. You have a set of gifts. Every single person is imbued with the thumbprint of God, and I believe that you all have absolutely awesome talents to share with the world, and the world is a darker place without yourself. So if you're struggling with it as a dude, one, understand it's totally normal in terms of every guy has pretty much thought about these problems. Every guy is struggling with where society is at right now. But two, don't be afraid to speak up about it to your mates, to guys in your life. And if you don't have anyone, and unfortunately that's the situation, like, you need to start building up people that, around you that you can trust, that you can reach out to. And there's plenty of organizations out there, guys. I know there's a few numbers that were put up here, but this is why I love let's call it the freedom community, because that has, when people have been cut off from their families, it's acted as almost a second sort of therapy group, a second family structure. Build these networks out. And for those of you that have your crap together a little bit more, be proactive. Just like my example where I gave, if your sister got into a relationship and now she's a single mother with a kid, go out of your way, help that kid. Be around the kid, check in at least once a week, arrange for dates where you're like, yep, kid, mate, son, we're going for a fishing trip, or we're going to do this today, or whatever. Be proactive. Don't just be like, oh, I got my crap together. There is a world out there to help and to shine a light on. And so, yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, and just to get a little bit esoteric for a second, don't forget, God gives his toughest challenges to his toughest warriors. So everything that happens in your life, good or bad, serves some sort of purpose. It's there to guide you or teach you a new lesson on this journey we call life. So there's fundamental theological and philosophical belief behind this. So don't be afraid to dive into philosophy. Don't be afraid to dive into these deeper esoteric topics. They can bring you a lot of joy and meaning in life. And I feel like a lot of men are being told to stay away from understanding these complex topics because, we should only talk about cars and drinking beers. I'm not sure, you've probably noticed with your mates, especially your Anglo mates, they won't talk about anything slightly deep or spiritual unless you get them 5 pingers deep and give them 20 beers. Has that been your experience? Yeah. So it's a very Aussie Anglo thing that they won't ever explore deeper topics until they're absolutely tanked. You don't need to get absolutely hammered to talk about spiritual or higher things. You got your friends. I'm sure. Joel will love to have a nice spiritual chat with you. I would, to my friends and to all the other community, people want to have these chats. You don't have to put on this whole Anglo, I only care about cars and AFL thing. All right, guys?
I'll put it out there, guys. If you really got no one, if you truly have no one, and I mean this, and you're in this position where you're struggling with suicidality, send me an email, joel@tpaust.com. joel@tpaust.com.au. Send me an email. I'm happy to connect you with the amazing network we've got around the country to have a cup of coffee a week or whatever. Guys, you're not living your best. If you don't think you're living your best life, we can get you on track. We can help you. There's an amazing bunch of people out there that you have no idea exist out there. But every time I travel this country, I meet amazing people with amazing gifts, and they're shining their light and their gifts throughout Australia and making Australia a better place. And you can too, and these guys can help you with it. So reach out to me. Happy to help, because no one should suffer in silence. And yeah, I pray that you would do the same for others in return.
Amen. God bless.
So the next part is about dating, specifically the question. The question is the dating world holds men to different and sometimes tougher standards. Let's check it out. This is the last topic.
So I'm not going to bite on the words different or anything that could be energetically charged. I'll start with what is factually true. So Professor Galloway out of the States has done some research on this, and it shows that men will swipe about 200 times before they get a match, and 1 in 5 people will actually end up on a date. So it basically is 1,000 swipes for a coffee. The bottom 50% of men get no action. The top 10% of men get all the action. So there's a lot of men who are feeling rejected all day, every day. So we've got lost men not feeling needed and then feeling rejected on top of that. So your willingness to want to be incentivized to go out, potentially meet a mate, and get hit in the guts before you find someone that actually wants to spend time with you is why we see the rise of incels and aggression, because we go, well, women, this must be their fault. It's like, no, I think that as men, we haven't given enough role models or enough alternatives around what you can do to create value and feel attractive.
I'm bisexual, so I've dated both men and women. And I think for me, dating, the difference I've seen is, yes, exactly what you emphasize on. Like, women definitely values men that are emotionally available and also like emotionally mature. Dating takes effort, it takes commitment. But compared to, I would say, men, it's definitely more regressive, less emotionally available. You have to actually deep dive a little bit more deeper, which is something that struggle with a little bit more. Rejection is part of just putting yourself out there, but it's the social conditioning, of us men being conditioned that aggression is the only warranted emotion that we can have to anything.
There's also so many scapegoats and easy ways to go self-soothe with porn,
100%.
drugs, games.
Yep.
Like, instead of going, shit, I'm maybe a bit of a loser, maybe I'm getting rejected a lot, and again, a bit of an idea of what a man should be, it'd be go to the gym, go work out, eat healthier, pick yourself up, do something about it. But that's easy said than done. Who have they got there to push them? They're probably surrounded by men in the same boat.
In my opinion, porn has ruined the way that males walk into relationships and dating, 110%. They expect X, Y, Z in a bedroom.
Yep.
If they're not getting what they want out of a female partner, then they think that they need to go find someone else. But then let's add on top social media. You have on your phone, in your fingertips, within 5 minutes, 100,000 women that you can look at compared to whoever you are currently in a relationship with.
It gives men access to a reality that they've never would have otherwise earned.
No, they're never on, they're not even on that level. They're not on that demographic. Like, you've got blokes that are on the dole looking at women that would never look at them, that are expecting $1 million a year, What do you boys have to say?
I agree with you about porn. I don't agree. I think social media in general is a positive thing. I think the fact that we can all be connected is a very positive thing.
Great.
Modern day dating in general is a lot more successful, productive, and the system works really well. I think the modern dating world probably makes men more competitive. Social media, like, I have to compete with you guys. Like, look, you're all hot. I have to see your social media and look at that and go, all right, I've got to compete with this guy now. It's going to make for a better society. It's going to make us all work harder. What do you think is a solution to what you just said? I think what you said is 100% right, those numbers. Do you think there's a solution, or do you think that's how things should be, or do you think that's a bad thing?
I think we need to give men more role models that help them understand that rejection's a part of the process and not to fall into a depressive spiral as a result of that. Every top successful person will say, I am consistent. And I will get up
100%.
when... So that
Rain,
is a
hail, or
great
shine.
trait to have in dating as well, right? When you're like, I've been rejected
it can get a
200
bit creepy
times.
if you're too persistent.
No, not persistent on one person.
No, not that way.
No.
Creepy
It's called
is
stalking.
creepy is persistent to one person. Perseverance is the ability to diversify that until it's reciprocated.
100%, yeah.
And
Sure.
then you have a match where persistence is attractive.
There's two things that I find really fascinating about what we're talking about here. One is this like idea of returning to nature, and what a lot of what you're saying strikes me as conquest. Like if you want this, you get this. You work hard for this. I think men need a blueprint that is expansive, not reductive. And so for me, it really strikes me that like the stuff around dating that I find really fascinating is that all of those stats hold true, right? What you said about Scott Galloway. But what I think is so important is to acknowledge the differences that in like heterosexual relationships women and men have on dating apps or in the dating world, right? And that Margaret Atwood quote comes to mind where she says, men are afraid that women will laugh at them and women are afraid that men will kill them, right? And that level of fear that I think women in the dating world feel or in relationships is so profound. And I think when it comes to dating, there's so much about like pick yourself up by the bootstraps, work hard, which I agree with. I think it's great. But at the same time, it's like give men the tools to deal with the human emotions of shame and fear and rejection.
We have to look at society now. Men are not taught how to be men. Like it's not something you are just taught at home. It's not something you're taught in school. Like, because there are so many reactive men that are just hurt boys and they don't know how to control it.
And turn aggressive.
Correct.
As opposed to staying active, healing,
Exactly
and being
right.
in the midst.
Instead of looking within themselves, they're just projecting out.
That's one of the misconceptions around masculinity, that masculinity is stoicism, don't feel the emotions. The reality is you know how to feel your emotions
Exactly
and control
right.
them,
Exactly
not
right.
avoid them.
100%.
That's a common theme I think that's very wrong about masculinity is it's not I don't feel, it's no I know how to feel and I can do it well.
Okay, thank you so much, guys.
Thanks for sharing what you shared, man.
Mate, I'm a little bit disappointed. Don't get me wrong. Like, it was good to see the obvious that we want to see out of these discussions, which is the very clear propaganda that SBS want to be like, let's get a panel of 6 men. Let's tell them to tell other men to stop beating women. Obviously, we all agree that. But where was like the cutting edge of the discussion?
The nuance
about like how are they? Like, and we've touched. I feel like we touched on it more with disagreement between us than they did. Like, where is the discussion about how the demolition of the church, of religion, losing that from society has impacted Australia? Where is the discussion about how that's impacted marriage and how marriage breaking it down is a problem? We only just touched on pornography at the end there and how it's decimating things. And I get the feeling that if that went on a little bit longer, Tarang and Jeff would have said, no, I think porn's fine. I think it makes us better lovers. Like, where was that cutting edge of the discussion? And then the other thing is, it's like, we didn't even chat about, you know, exactly what it means to be masculine. We didn't even get that. So I'm a little bit disappointed. I thought it was a much more honest discussion and with less editing, but there were some question marks. Like, Mitch really came out of his shell by the end of it.
F-bomb
but I felt that, but also feel like Clayton put himself out there early because they went to him first. He's the guy that was talking on the first question, which was about body counts, and then he barely said anything by the end, and Jeff barely said anything as well. It's like, did these guys just not talk, or was it a lot of it edited out? So I'm just curious about the guy on the far right of the panel, Jeff. I barely saw any comments till the end. But anyways, look, this is just why I think they should put out the whole thing. But
probably
but look,
afraid,
on the whole, look, it's good it happened. I'm glad it happened. I mean, I can't really disagree with a whole bunch of it. Most of it made sense. I just feel like there were other things, like there were things they could have talked about that they didn't get to. I don't know. What do you think?
Look, to be honest with you, I'm pretty disappointed entirely. Like, if I knew I had to watch, I'd never watch this again. Essentially, if someone,
me too. No, I'm not
like,
watching.
I won't recommend this to people to watch. Like, I don't think it's helpful. I think it's just like common sense stuff that we all already understand. To me, wasn't nuanced enough. And like, even then, like, I agree with the pink jumper man. He said that it's actually the best time ever to be dating as a man. Technically, that's true. Like, if you look at the DNA studies, 3000 BC onwards, only 20% of men reproduce compared to 90% of women. So, like, yes, right now it's like 80-90% of men have reproduced in today's time. So, yes, right now it is the best time to be a man in terms of dating. But yeah, I just overall it just felt like what I think it really is. I think a lot of these guys, it's their first time on TV. They're gonna be they're worried they're gonna be shown in front of Australia. They probably don't want to like be too edgy because I've watched Shocko's videos. He's a lot more edgy on his Instagram. He's a lot more like, he kind of came
It felt
off
like
a bit.
setup. It felt like he was like.
I just felt like he
Like
felt
he
a bit.
doesn't know where they've dropped him, basically.
Yeah, but he sounded a bit woke, to be honest. Like everyone just seemed very woke. I think the pink guy was probably the most like the least woke, and then maybe the guy at the start when he came out and he was a bit like, he got into a bit of theological Christian kind of ideas. But then after that, it just felt new. Like it just felt like the whole thing went flat. Like they might as well had a bunch of females sitting there. To be honest, that's what it felt like.
Yeah,
I know it's harsh, but I'm a bit of a look. I'm a bit of a. I like to be a bit of a smart ass.
Done? You know what I would have done? And take your pick. I would have sacked one person from the left side and one person from the right side of this general discussion. Because the way it went was the people that had the closest to our position was probably Dean, Chris, and Mitch in that order. And then the closest to the left side was probably Jeff, Mitch, and Tarang. That didn't really... We like... But the Overton window was very safe. I reckon sack someone from the left side, maybe Mitch... not Mitch, Clayton. Clayton was the guy that talked about dating. Maybe you sack him and sack one of the guys from the right side. Add 2 chicks in from both opposing views, so the chicks would oppose each other.
Yeah.
And I could very easily find 2 girls. Like I would probably throw like Liz Storer in for the guy side, and then for the girl side, maybe throw I don't know, some chick in. That would have been, I think the guys would have activated a little bit more and woken up. But I don't know. What do you guys think in the comments? Are we crazy? Are we misogynist? Are we bang on? Do you think we're not radical enough? I mean, I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are, guys. My camera is about to die, but mate, I really appreciate you jumping on with this. Did you have any other final thoughts?
I just thought maybe you want to have a quick moment to bring up our last chat and have a quick chat about that, but depends how much time you have.
Look, I can switch to this camera. People are fine with that.
That's fine. Yeah, we can make it work.
Yeah, no, look, I just to wrap up that discussion, guys, I'm going to leave the description to SBS The Feed. Go show them some love because they did pay for and fund this whole thing. So go over there, leave a comment so that we can actually see what accurate cross-section of people think. I got a bit mugged in the SBS comments, but in my comment section, people were saying, yeah, Abby's an idiot, this and that. Go over to SBS, leave a comment, give them the views, give them the ad revenue, let them see that there is actually a lot of appetite in these discussions. But also, let's move on. When it comes to our last discussion that we had, I made the point that I didn't frame things probably the way that I was opportune with regards to the discussion about where Australia is. I made the point that, we've got 6 years to save the country before it gets very difficult. What were your thoughts generally on that?
Look, I generally enjoyed that chat. It created a lot of provocative thoughts for me to think about. I was like, damn, maybe Joel is right. Maybe, because I've had these thoughts before. It's not like they're dormant inside me. And I didn't take it as Joel's giving up or Joel's like trying to he's giving up on Australia. I took it as like Joel's just being very he's like father figure in this moment, telling you that there could be a serious issue here, and instead of kind of ignoring it and hoping, I hope everyone's always hoping. Enough of hope. We need action. We need activity in politics. We need people to step up and get involved. Enough of this hope. And I know people, they finish their work. And they want to just chill out and get entertained. But at the end of the day, Joel opened his heart out and witnessed some things, and I took that very powerfully, and I really enjoyed hearing Joel say that because it made me think. Okay, and it actually activated me. I'm actually now doing more political things that I normally wasn't doing, partly because of what Joel has said. So that's how I took it. I kind of enjoyed what you said, and I don't see it as any form of weakness, and it's something that needed to be said because no one else was saying it, Joel, and I'm glad someone finally said it.
No, look, I appreciate you saying that. What I was trying to say was, and what I was expecting people to react to, which they didn't, was guys, in the next 6 years, the Liberal Party with Susan Ley, they're going to win. They're going to lose the next election. They just are. Even if we do well in the next election, we still won't have the balance of power in the Senate because of how much Labor won senators. So unless we get a double dissolution, we're stuck with this Senate for 6 years. So in the election that's 6 years from now, not 3 years, 6 years from now, if we don't capture the reins of power at that point, the amount of damage our democracy has suffered, normally I'd say, yep, we can reverse it. But the problem is the sheer level of attack on democracy itself, freedom of speech, freedom to raise money, the donation laws in South Australia, not allowed donations anymore. The window is closing, and my point to people is that is a closing window. We cannot take it for granted, so we need to double our efforts. Whereas a lot of people, they took that as not we need to double our efforts, not let's go. You know, that's how I'd like to think Chucky or yourself, you know, reacted listening to that. It's what's my escape plan to get out of here in 6 years? And I'm like, okay, that's all right. Maybe I need to rephrase this. What I was also trying to make the point of was if you can't raise your kids how you want to raise them, if you can't actually get off your, get a business off the ground because of the red tape and the overtaxation, your taxes aren't being spent very well here. Maybe you need to go overseas, take your business there, raise your kids how you want to raise them with your values, with your wife overseas, if that makes sense for you. Now, most people listening, they're not in that basket, but a lot of people are. Now, that doesn't mean you get up and leave and you forget about the country that raised you and gave you these opportunities. That means the fight changes. That means you're offshoring from a position of strength overseas to raise capital, to build yourself in a very strong position and your kids so that you never lose your kids. There are people that have lost their kids, guys, for various reasons. It's actually me being honest with you and saying, hey, you could face a closing window where you can't have the economic mobility that you used to have, or you can't raise your kids with the values that you want to raise them with. The state wants your kids because they don't have kids; they have your kids. So if you're in that position, from that position of strength by moving overseas, raise your kids, build your business up, and then with that intention, turn your focus to Australia. How can I help the country that raised me and gave me these opportunities, that my parents were able to give me the life that I had? The fight for Australia never stops, and I want to make that absolutely clear. And so that's really what I wanted to say, but I appreciate that some people took it differently. George, mate, you're awesome. You took it exactly how I took it listening to it when I first said it. It was, we got to dig deeper and we've got to fight freaking hard, otherwise we're going to lose this amazing country. But a lot of people, they didn't, and they called me up and they know me and they said, Joel, I know you said this, but I interpreted it as you're giving up and you're moving overseas. And like, that's really not what I was trying to say.
Well,
and so...
Yeah. I think, just to add that, I did take it that you think you're going to move overseas, but I took it that you need to move overseas. You don't have a choice. Like, if you want to continue being Joel, you're going to have no option. That's the issue here. For Georges and Joels and us to exist, like, it's either we end up in prison or we go somewhere else. That's kind of what's going to happen, right?
100%.
And it's happening in the UK. 100%. You see with Tommy Robinson and all these other figures, they're going to jail all the time for speaking up. So, like...
Yeah, and people don't get that. People, like, I was telling a Victorian the other day, I said, just casually, flippantly during the discussion, I said, if your kid is struggling with being gay in Victoria and you want to help them work through that, and maybe they're talking to a priest about it because they're Christian, you can't do that in Victoria. You're not allowed to do that. The state can take your child off you. You're also not allowed to take your kid to a different state to get that treatment. Now, this isn't shock therapy. This isn't, this is a parent where their kid's struggling with being gay. There's nothing wrong with being gay, but it's a sin in Christianity. If the kid's trying to work through that, you're not allowed to take him to a priest. Now, if you take your kid outside the state, you're not allowed to do that either. The kid will be taken off you. And so this was a shock to Michael when I spoke to Michael Gray Griffith about this. He didn't know this. And I'm like, guys, George and I are at the cutting edge. We know these things. We know the censorship that's coming down from the e-safety commissioner. It's gotten so bad to the point that I've always said I never want to run for politics. I am an independent guy. I work outside. My job is to muster the troops. I'm starting to reconsider that. And the reason for that is it's becoming untenable. The amount of lawsuits I've had to put down or get rid of, it's getting untenable to even make a video and say facts out there, because with lawsuits, the punishment is the process of you could say something you say is 100% correct, but they run you through the courts even though you're right, and the punishment is the crime. No one's got tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to burn. So, but if you're a politician, you have parliamentary privilege. You can say in that chamber what you need to say. That's how bad things are getting. So if it makes sense that it's easier to do my job from America or from some other country because they actually value and respect the battle of ideas and free speech, I'm going to take that, and I'm going to continue to fight for Australia from that position of strength. But I'm not going to be a clown and let banks close me down and debank me, social media take me out because I'm here in Australia. I'm going to make steps that are strategically sound and are actually going to help us win this war. And if you want to misinterpret that, mate, that's not a me problem. I could not have said it better than I've said it right here. If you're going to misinterpret that, you're not a viewer of mine. But if you actually appreciate what I'm throwing down, and a lot of people did, like yourself, they appreciated that. They said, thank you for being frank. Thank you for not selling me hopium about where things are going. Things are getting bad. But I appreciate you giving me information that I can base my mortgage decisions on, my family decisions on, my business decisions on. I really value that because you value me and my time, Joel. You're not going to bullcrap me. And so, mate, that's what I wanted to clarify. And I really appreciate you pushing back before we turned the cameras on that. Because, yeah, it's not easy. No one's got the answers. But it's good to have this community where we can be frank with each other.
Yeah, and part of being a man is having that perspicacity to actually see to be able to see that future. Sorry about my dog, guys. It's just being a little wuss right now.
No, he's cute, mate. It's a nice embellishment. I like it. I've got the sword, you got the dog.
Traditionally, Liberals were the father, Labor was the mother. Mummy, daddy, right? What's daddy's job? Tell you the truth, common sense, tell you how to pay your bills, make sure that the house is running, all that kind of thing. And what's the mummy's job? You know, when the kid gets hurt, runs to mummy, gonna cry, handouts, cheeky little chocolate egg here and there. She's always going to have you. She's always going to look after you. She's always going to tell you are the best, even if she's going to say you're so beautiful, even if you're ugly as hell. She'll tell you you're beautiful. And what's happening now is because we've been running to mummy so much handouts, so much this, and because the Liberal Party is literally not a father figure anymore, it's literally become a cuck boy. Okay, maybe I need to take this dog, and I'll continue 1 second. Sorry, guys.
Mate, that's so cute.
Yeah, she's cute, but she's only 8 months. She's just 8 months, so she just wants to be loved. But yeah, because the Liberal Party has lost its identity as a father figure and has become almost like a cuck, always trying to appeal to the moderates, always trying to appeal to the teals, lacking courage, lacking bravery, lacking common sense. We have no father figure anymore. It's just the mummy, and now we've got a whole country of mummy boys. That's honestly what's happened, I think. And it's going to get worse and worse as long as the Liberal Party keep degrading themselves further and further down being a cuck. So, I don't know, that's probably
totally
the best
agree, mate.
metaphor I can use.
Look, we've got an important South Australia state election coming up next year in March, and then you've got a local election happening later next year. I've seen a lot of friends of yours and mine putting their hand up to run. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about leveraging some Turning Point Australia resources for that election. And also Victoria, New South Wales, we've got elections in November next year, and then New South Wales is March after that. So a lot of work to do. Guys, we can make a huge difference in these elections. We can actually get the balance of power in these elections. They've all got upper houses. And so I'm looking forward to making preparations about that. That's what my focus is. But, mate, let me send you some love. If you guys are listening, I want to thank George for coming on. Please send him some love. Buy him a cup of coffee a week, a month. The link's in the description. Please show him some love and help him keep the lights on. The guy's getting married, so, he's got a lot of the marriage industrial complex, as you guys can appreciate. It's not cheap putting a wedding on in Australia in 2025. I'll tell you that much. My brother's in that same boat. So, guys, please send him some love. Send him a wedding gift of $1,000 if you really love George and value what he does. He's always streaming. I always see him doing new things. So please support him. And George, is there anything else you want to leave the audience with?
My final message to the Victorians out there is please, from the bottom of my heart, do not approve a Dan Andrews statue in that beautiful city. That is like putting a statue of, I don't know, Hitler up there. You must not put that statue up. That will be an absolute disgrace to Victoria.
I'd love to see a statue. I really do.
You want to see the statue?
Really yeah, I know. It's history, mate. It's just history, you know. It's because I'm trying to be consistent here. The BLM guys were like, oh, we're going to pull down statues of bad people. I was like, well, it's your history. I mean, just keep it up there. It's what happened, and it is what it is. But no, they want to pull these statues down. So, but I don't know. That's my view. I think that it's important to teach how they were men, how the humanity of the person, good and bad. I think that's important to do that. And look, if that's what I think it's been consistent. I mean, you know, if you look at the 2020 riots with Black Lives Matter, they were pulling down these statues, and it's like, well, he who controls the present controls the past, and that's the problem I see. They are rewriting history. Now, I don't want to fall into that trap. I want to be like, you see that guy? You see that statue? That guy locked down his city for almost 300 days in 2 years. I want to be able to do that. And I think that it's not celebrating having a statue. I think it's just a part of Australia's history. You know, we got portraits of a lot of abhorrent people in the West, but it is what it is.
That's a fair point. As long as he's holding a big syringe, that's my compromise.
God bless you, mate.
Thank you, mate.
Look, guys, thank you for listening. I do hope SBS do more of these debates. Again, go show them some love. And if you want to support this show, the Ark, I've also left a description, a link to support us on our website. So God bless you guys. I'll see you later, and we'll have plenty more discussions for you next week. Ciao.